Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's edition of the Renny Show. Welcome, Jenny. Hello. How are you?
Good afternoon. I am incredibly well. I'm a bit snotty. Are you allowed to say snotty?
Yes, you can
I
say that.
don't
That's
mean
fine.
stuck up. I mean a bit meh.
Yeah.
It's not COVID, you'd be pleased to know.
Happy days.
So if I sound a bit nasal, it's because I'm a bit
You do
snotty. So I
sound a little bit
apologize,
bunged up, bless you.
dear
Yeah.
listeners.
Yeah.
But I feel fabulous and I'm very excited for this show.
Excellent. Well, so am I, because as we promised, folks, we are focusing on fear as the theme for today. So, as always, we don't know what questions we're going to have for each other, but I know this is going to be a very interesting conversation. Really looking forward to seeing where it goes. If you're joining us live, excuse me, please do pop us a comment so that the various social media channels tell us you're watching and who you are. And if you're watching on replay, pop us a hashtag replay. And don't forget to put your questions in. We have actually had a listener question today, so that will be involved. The wonderful Tracy Baum got involved and put a question forward for us. So I will come to that in a bit. But I guess it's time to get started, Jenny. So let's go with our first question. So my first question for you is, can you give an example of using your for the positive?
Part of what I'd really like to talk about, because it's a really fabulous thing that I'm interested in, as you know, is personality traits. And so when we are all driven by fear, because fear is an absolutely fundamental survival thing that we all have. So I think the first thing to say probably is there's no need to be frightened of fear, because actually it's what keeps us alive, but it can also get us really stuck, can't it? So for me, understanding what my greatest fears are from a personality trait point of view has meant that I can identify with them,
Yeah.
and B, I know when I know what triggers them, then I can start to catch myself. So using the Training Rock animal influencers, my
Okay.
my top influencers are ant, ant, dog, lion.
Okay.
And ant is an incredibly creative, motivating, busy, positive kind of um, animal. Um, and an ant's greatest fear is stillness.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Um,
I can see
and
that.
the reason they are frightened of that is because if we're very busy as ants and we keep going and doing all sorts of things, projects, things, um, um, shiny object syndrome, um, we don't have to um, be still and
Yeah.
reflect on and deal with some of those difficult emotions that we'd rather not deal
Yeah.
with. So that really resonated for me when I first started working with Joe Andrews and Katie at the Training Rock. Um, so that fear of stillness, and that when I first heard it, my instant reaction was, "Oh, I don't like no." And then I thought, oh, actually, that's so true.
Yeah.
And of course, knowledge is power, isn't it? So what I've been able to do is recognize when, as an ant, I'm speeding up frantically, keeping busy to avoid some of those emotions I'd rather not deal with.
Yeah. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Makes a lot of sense. And I just have to give a quick shout out. We've got Jane, Vicky, and John watching us today. So hi, thanks for joining us. And if you've got any comments, please do
Hi.
pop them in so that we can. John is in Fulham apparently. So yeah, please do pop comments in if you'd like to join in with the conversation. But yeah, I think personality traits are a fascinating way of getting to grips with what's going on for us and helping to identify things. I think quite often that might be a little bit uncomfortable to have to admit. And that's how I think this is a great way of using it for the positive, because it's, sometimes we need that little kick up the bottom to help us to actually accept some. Oh, we've got Tracy with us as well, and Stella. Hello. Sometimes we need that kick up the behind to accept that that might be a trait that we have in our personality. I think that there's always mixed opinions, isn't there, about the various different tests you can do about personality and profiling and all that sort of stuff. But I think it can provide a fascinating insight into what's going on for us. And like I say, I think it's, that's a real great way to use it for the positive, to, make us stand up and admit the truth about what's going on and why.
And tools are only as good as the use you put them to, aren't they?
Absolutely.
So all
Absolutely.
all personality profiling, it's just a tool to help you ask the questions and to give you almost a starter for 10. So it's just a way of thinking around how you can access, and also I really, and I know we've talked about this before, so getting away from that, this is good, this is bad, we're not kind of divisive like that, actually.
No.
All fears are equally valid, and all fears serve a purpose, namely to keep us safe, but it can be a driver of our behavior, and also it can get in our way if we don't know that we're doing it. And I think that's the thing that we talk a lot about on the Renny Show, is getting out of your own way.
Yeah, definitely. Which can only be a good thing.
Is it my first first question for you?
What have you got for me?
I thought for the first question, I thought we'd stick to the animal influencers, and if anybody wants to know, there'll be some more information at the end of the program about how you can find out more about the animal influencers.
Keep an eye out for that. We'll pop links in for you.
So my question, because I know that you've done the trait test, Rachel, and what was your top influencer? What was your top influencer's greatest fear?
So my top influencer was the ostrich. So greatest fear of conflict, and I can really see through my life how that's taken a not I was going to say taken hold. That's not what I mean, but I can really see the impact that it's had. What's made a difference in more recent years, as my self-belief and my self-love has grown, I've felt far more able to have those conflicts. If I believe there's a true purpose to having it, I'm not out for having conflict for conflict's sake. But Tracy's just made a comment: all fears are irrational and cannot be reasoned out. I think that's a really good point to remember, that sometimes where the fear comes from, it can be very complicated, can't it, to have to deal with. But yeah, that fear of conflict, I'm not as afraid of it now, and I think that's due to exposure to it, because I've had the self-confidence to expose myself to that fear. I know people often talk about when you talk about overcoming fears, which is going to be one of my questions in a minute. Exposure to that fear is often something that is talked about, isn't it? And I can see how that's definitely made a difference for me, because I'm not as afraid of it now. But perhaps I think it's something that's always, it's still there. I think there will always be a residual thing that doesn't go away, a natural trait in that direction. But I've been able to overcome it to a great degree, I'd say. So yeah.
And I think the thing about that the reason that the Training Rock frames it in that way is that when our fear is triggered, we overuse our strengths, our natural strengths, and they become vulnerabilities, because they are extremes of that positive behavior, and they make us vulnerable. So that the ostrich is a lovely example, because I think people will recognize it. So ostriches, their strengths are that their fabulous ability to see all sides, to look at different perspectives, to be able to involve and collaborate and get people together. And
Yeah.
of course, when their fear of conflict is triggered, what happens is that they do that classic thing that ostriches, I don't know if they actually do it, but it's a myth, isn't it,
Oh, do
that
they?
they bury their head in the sand, so that
Yeah.
they don't want to address it. And it's a lovely example of when you overuse that strength of seeing all
Yeah.
perspectives and asking for everybody's opinion, that when you slide down this end of the scale to the extreme, it's actually avoiding doing that. So
Yeah.
what was a strength becomes a vulnerability, and that for me is the power of understanding your fear. Is because, as
Definitely.
exactly as you said it so beautifully, when I know what it is, and I can give myself ways to cope with it, I understand
Yeah.
what triggers it for me, and I know how to cope with it, then I can keep myself from that far end of vulnerability, because I can keep my strengths as strengths.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a comment from John here. He says, I'm ant, ostrich, and dog, and absolutely hear Jenny's point about fear of stillness. Yeah, my third one's ant as well, John. So it seems we've all got quite a lot in common on
And
that one.
and of course, John, dog is great. Dog's greatest fear is of rejection. So
Yeah,
I have dog. Dog is my second. Dog is my second influencer. So that fear of rejection
yeah,
is powerful, and again, means that I can put everybody else's in it. As a dog, that fear of rejection means that we put everybody else's needs before our own,
yeah,
to our detriment. And I remember that as a
yes.
first coach, my very first coaching session, my coach said to me, asked me that question: are you aware, Jenny, that you put everybody else's needs before your own? And I said, like you do, yeah, but I'm cured. I used to do that, but I'm okay now. And she smiled gently at me and said, I think we may have some more work to do. And that
Yes.
was 20 years ago. So yeah.
We've just had a comment from Vicky actually to say she hasn't done the trait test and needs to do it. So that's something we can absolutely arrange for you, Vicky. It's absolutely fascinating. Well worth doing. To anyone that's watching, if you haven't done it, do get in touch with us, because we will be able to sort that out for you. I'm saying that on your behalf, Jenny, because obviously it comes from you.
Yeah,
Um,
I will. I will send you over, Rach, I will send you over the link now. And
Fantastic.
then you can pop it up in the and also at the end of the I've just sent it over. And at
Brilliant.
the end
I'll just stick this in the
of the
comments.
Renny show, I'll also put it in my LinkedIn profile so people have got it. Um, it is great fun and incredibly insightful.
Yeah.
So
Right. Bear
how
with me
exciting.
just 1 second. Everything's working very slowly, but here we go. Copy. And I'm going to stick it now in the comments for you folks. So if you would like to do the trait test, then now you should be able to. And do let us know. Stella says she hasn't done it either, thinks she might be an ant as well. Okay, so we'd love to know when you've all done the trait test. Do come back onto the stream and pop your comments of what you came up with, and whether you were surprised, whether it showed up anything you were expecting. You know, we'd love to carry on the conversation and see what it brought up for you. So thanks for getting involved. Okay, so is it my question now? I've lost where we were. Yeah, it is.
Sorry, I think it is your question, Rachel. Yes.
Okay, great. So my next question, I'll pop it up on the screen now. What's your top tip for overcoming fear? Now, this is based on Tracy's question, hints for overcoming fears.
My top tip. I think you alluded to it. Well, I think you did more than allude. You said it, Rachel. So you gave me the answer, which is really good. I think there are a couple of top tips. I think the first one, as ever, is to acknowledge it. Um, so acknowledging what that fear is. The second tip is understanding where it comes from. Quite often it's an experience from our childhood or from a way of being or an experience that we had that contributes to that fear. The third tip is you said top tip? I'm going to give you
No, go
four.
for it. You
Um,
carry on.
the third one is to understand how it serves you. So there's a
Yeah,
reason we have a fear, irrational or not. I hear
yeah,
Tracy's absolutely. How does it serve you? What's it doing for you? Because there is for us to continue to be fearful of something, it's serving a purpose somewhere. So
yeah.
thinking a bit about what that purpose is. And then the fourth one is back to your one, which is actually um, exposing yourself. I don't
Yeah.
think I mean that.
This
Exposing,
is a Queen show,
exposing
family
yourself.
family show.
Yes, exposing yourself to that fear. So
Yeah.
I have a completely irrational fear of spiders, and it's spider season at the moment, isn't it? And
Yes,
it's
isn't it
really, I mean,
just?
it's huge. It's huge. And I think that fear comes from living abroad in countries where there were spiders who, that are poisonous. They
Yeah.
don't
So
mean to
you can
poison
argue
you.
that's quite rational.
Well, yeah. The irrational bit is that
Yeah.
the likelihood of them biting me or coming anywhere near me
Yeah.
is probably quite small, but it doesn't feel
Absolutely.
that small, does it, when you're in those
No.
countries? Um, so in fact, I have a but most of the spiders that live in the UK are not poisonous. But can I just say, there are some really muscly, hairy beasts about,
Yeah, they're not
and
nice,
they
are
do.
they? I'm not a
They,
fan.
I don't mind the little ones, and I don't mind, but those big hairy muscular ones that are like
Yeah.
the size of my hand and too big for a beer glass, I'm not a fan. So
Yeah.
I really have to kind of look at them and go, they're just small, they're not here to hurt me. I don't want to hurt them. I
Yeah.
just don't want to share my space with them. So I need to find ways of removing them, but having that conversation with myself about they're not here to hurt me.
Yeah.
But I recognize that I don't want to share my space with them. And
Yeah.
so we come to an
Definitely.
amicable agreement. I put glass over the top of them, and then I remove them kindly to somewhere that isn't in my house.
Yes, and that's what I do as well. And what came up for me while you were saying that was necessity. You know, when you're in, you know, using spiders as an example, because it's very much relevant in this house as well. Um, there's a necessity to it. My kids are, shall we say, not very favourable when it comes to spiders. So if they see one, they're expecting me as the grown-up to get rid. I seem to be chief spider catcher in this house, and so that there's an element where necessity, you know, forces you to face the fear. You know that you can. I'm sure you can picture the moment where this giant spider has arrived from wherever it is, and it's in a corner of the room. You know you need to get rid of it. And you've got the glass in your hand, but you don't want to go any closer to it because it's big and it's scary and it's not nice. But then, like you've said, you have to have that conversation with yourself about, but there's a necessity here, and it's not going to hurt me, but I am fearful of missing and it running away. So you've just got to take positive action, and then you sort of, 1, 2, 3, go and take that positive action. But I think necessity is definitely an interesting one when it comes to how we expose ourselves to these fears. Yeah, interesting one, definitely.
So, is it my question? Is it my question to you now? So obviously I'm still shuddering a bit from just checking the room for spiders now. Um, which got me thinking.
Yeah.
So my second question is, um, um, is there a funny side to fear?
Ooh, interesting. Okay. Oh, I'm just going to put that on the screen. Is
And
there a
that's not really
funny
an
side
open
of
question,
fear?
is it? But yes, what are your thoughts about the funny side of fear? I'll reframe
I
it.
think there can be. It depends. I guess, as with a lot of things, the answer it depends. But I think it depends on your approach to it. I think, we've talked about positivity, very early on in this conversation today, and I think there's an element here of using that positivity almost to try and find the funny side. Um, it doesn't mean that, when we're talking about someone who has a crippling fear of heights, and they can't go anywhere near the edge of something, it's clearly not going to feel very funny at the time. But I think that's where a bit of realism needs to kind of be brought into the situation, and a bit of perspective, and looking at, having it's that internal conversation, isn't it, of, well, where does this fear come from, seeking to understand it. Is it rational? Well, as discussed, more often than not, it's not rational. But and trying to understand why we're feeling like we are, and trying to spin it in a more positive way, perhaps. I mean, I don't know, in terms of, if we're talking about base emotions in human beings. I don't know that laughter and a funny side sits naturally with fear. However, I don't see why it can't, but that's going to take effort. Trying to see a positive side, or trying to see a funny side to what's going on when you're in that state of, fight, flight, or freeze. That's going to be quite difficult, isn't it? But that's not a reason not to try, I guess, would be my answer to that.
And I think sometimes, isn't it? It's the lengths. It's the lengths. What I was thinking about when I was thinking about the funny side is the lengths to which we will go to avoid the fear
Yeah,
can be quite amusing.
yeah,
And also sometimes the actions that we take
yeah,
to address that fear. So it might be going the long way around. I remember going back to the spider story. Um, there was this enormous spider at the bottom of my stairs, so it was preventing me from going to bed because I couldn't get past it. And I I phoned one of my sons, who was, I have to say, singularly unsympathetic,
oh,
about the size of this tarantula, and told me to grow a pair.
yeah,
Um, and I said, but no, it was one of those really big, bigger than your hands, tarantula size
yeah,
um, spiders. And I sucked it up. I did actually get the Hoover. I'm
yeah,
embarrassed to say this now, but anyway, I got the Hoover because it had a very long pole on it, and I
yeah.
sucked this spider up the Hoover. But then I was worried that the spider would climb out in the night. So I promise you, this is not a joke. I actually did this. I got some duct
Yeah.
tape. I thought it was actually duct tape. That's another story. And I taped over the end of the tube in
Yeah,
order that the spider wouldn't climb out. I mean, and as I was doing
yeah,
it, I was thinking, this is ridiculous. This is so ridiculous. So I then got the giggles, and I don't know whether it was partially hysteria from the relief of the spider being in the Hoover
absolutely. Yeah, I
pouch.
was just going to say,
Um,
that's a come down from the adrenaline, isn't it?
so maybe that's the link.
Yeah,
Maybe it's the come down from the facing your fear. Well, not facing, not that close. Um, of the ridiculous lengths to which we go to
yeah.
to feel safe.
I do think spiders are a really good example of this, because let's face it, they're all going to be petrified of us because we're so much bigger than them, and yet, you know, they have this much control over us, where they make us dance around with a glass going, oh, can I do it? Oh, I can't. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I'll go and get the Hoover and then I'm going to tape it up, you know, doing all these crazy things. And they've got all this power. And then you think, actually, if I went anywhere near it, it's just going to run away. It doesn't want to fight me. It wants to run away and keep itself safe. So yeah, there's definitely a funny side, isn't there? Oh, brilliant. Love that. Okay. So I shall move on to my last question for you.
Yeah.
So what is the most common fear that clients mention to you? Or is there not a pattern? There might be, there might not.
No, I'm just about to sneeze.
Oh,
excuse me.
Bless you. Bless you.
That wasn't their great. Thank you. Clients' greatest fear is often not being good enough. I think that's a really common fear. The fear of the imposter syndrome, the fear of being found out, the fear that somehow somebody will find them wanting and not good enough. Is the one that is most common, that we talk about in coaching sessions. What if I'm not good enough? What if and I've had many clients who've said, incredibly successful clients, who still feel that someday that they're going to be found out. It's like, what do you mean you're going to be found out? They're going to find out that I don't know everything. I was like, oh, okay. So I think that is the most common thing that we feel, that we're not good enough, that that will be found out for not being perfect. And as we know, that great perfection myth, we could have a whole 6 months of Renny shows about perfection. We're not going to do that. We are going to have we have got a theme, haven't we?
Yes.
A themed show. But that's the thing about not being good enough.
Yeah, and
obviously I suspect will resonate with you.
Yes, I was just going to say that resonates very much. And the other thing that cropped up for me is the amount of people who put these other people who, you know, outwardly are very successful, on a pedestal. Oh, but they're okay. They're doing really well. They're okay. I'm not good enough because I'm not doing as well. No, hang on a minute. It's getting people to realize that it doesn't matter who you put up on a pedestal, they're still human. And they're still going to have those feelings, those fears of not being good enough, not being worthy, being found out, you know. And I think that works both ways, you know, whether you're the one that's at the top or near it, that everyone else seems to think you're incredibly successful. And it's the same for the people viewing that person from the outside and thinking that they look fine. But yeah, I think fear of failure in some way is something that a lot of people are very much talking about. You know, I had a conversation this morning. Fear of using your own voice. You know, not being heard. You know, which again is probably by that person related to that sort of fear of failure, fear of not being good enough, fear of, you know, if I put my head above the parapet, I'm going to be told I'm not good enough. You know, it's amazing how, I say amazing, frightening, just how common that actually is. John's just joined in. Wicked good point there, sisters. Thank you very much. He says any kind of pedestalization generally gets us into trouble. Yes.
Pedestalization. Oh, I like that word. I can't say it, but I like it, John. And I think the thing is, I would put money on the fact that all of those people who, at one time or another, we have placed on a pedestal, are sitting in their coaching sessions, going, "Oh, I have this fear of people, you know, not thinking I'm good enough," or people.
Yeah.
So we all have those. They're very common. They're very common fears, aren't they?
Absolutely.
And I think.
Sorry, I was just going to say, Tracy's commented as well. 3 biggest fears: not being good enough, not being deserving, and not feeling worthy. Absolutely.
And I love that, not being deserving. That's a new word, deserving and worthy together in one sentence. And I think so many people feel that they don't deserve. I was having a conversation recently about how you accept compliments, and that fear of accepting compliments. And I have a great and dear friend who is absolutely rubbish at accepting compliments. And if I and that goes straight back to not feeling deserving or worthy, doesn't it? And if I
Absolutely.
say, wow, you're looking fabulous, or I love you to bits, she'll kind of go, oh yeah, and she kind of bats it off, and I let it go for a while, and then I went,
Yeah.
I need to have a conversation with you about this, because actually it comes from my heart.
Yeah.
It's an honesty. It's said with an honesty and a love that I feel. And actually,
Yeah.
if I gave you a present that was wrapped up, and I put it into your hands, you wouldn't chuck it back at me, would you? And she went, well, no,
Yeah.
that would be rude. And I said, well, that's exactly what you're doing when I give you a compliment and you go, oh, this old thing, or no, I'm not, or I think I'm really ugly, or I think I'm really, or I've put
Yeah.
on some weight, or all of those things. I said it's the equivalent of of throwing a present in my face. And she
Yeah.
said, I'd never thought of it in that way before. Um, and I think that being worthy, and also, as we said before, right at the beginning, that practicing facing your fear. So if you
Yeah.
feel unworthy and somebody says to you, wow, you did a great job, rather than say, if you can't think of anything else to say and your instant response is to go, oh no, I didn't, oh, this she can't mean, oh, she must be having a laugh, actually all you need to say is thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
All you need to say is thank you. You don't need,
Yeah.
and actually let it settle.
Yeah.
So that kind of, when somebody says something fabulous to you, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, um, the first thing to say is just thank you. And the
Yeah.
second is to think, why? Where does that come from? Because I suspect that is linked to your worthiness and your feeling deserving. And that
Absolutely.
will
Yeah.
come from, so often it comes from, and I'm not a therapist, it comes from your childhood. Let's blame your parents. But our childhood environment and our conditioning that we go,
Yeah.
most of the conditioning we undergo as children and young people growing up, I hope, is unintentional.
Yeah.
um so when those school reports that have damaged you, those school reports, those
Yeah.
teachers who will say you'll never amount to anything,
Yeah.
um and those I was at say a conference last week, and there was a young person talking about an award they'd got at school. It was at a prom. I think somebody thought it was funny.
Mm.
um and the award they got, because they said they weren't academically gifted, but they gave it a go. The award they were given at in front of everybody was the award for the person most likely to go to prison.
Wow.
And you think, who in their right minds thought that was appropriate, funny, all of those things? And what it instilled in
That's
that
all kinds
person
of wrong.
was a feeling of, and he said, I have to say, I've never been anywhere near prison, but that was
Mm.
as a child, that was
Yeah.
the award he was given.
Yeah.
Um, and is it any wonder that people feel unworthy, or that they don't deserve
Yeah.
success, and that
Absolutely.
success comes in many forms?
Gosh, what a thought, eh? It just shows you um, how far-reaching these things are on your personality and on all the various different elements of your life, which yeah, just I guess to me just hammers home the point even more that being proactive about the way that you deal with these things and making a choice to do something about it is just so important. To making a conscious choice to feel better about yourself and to learn to love everything about you. Yeah. Wow, that got a bit deep, didn't it?
I know we do that sometimes, don't we? Ooh. So my third question for you, Rachel, is what's the biggest fear that you've overcome?
Okay, I'm just typing that in to put in the banner. The biggest fear that I've overcome Has to be the one, the fear of falling. And I won't
Yes,
say,
we talked about that.
we have talked about this before. Um, I,
Excuse
for a
me.
long time, I mean, I suppose it's fairly natural in a way to have a fear of falling, because falling doesn't feel good in your tummy and it usually doesn't end well. Um, but falling from height, and after an experience many years ago on the Oblivion roller coaster at Alton Towers that just drops you from a great height, just in a straight line, into a hole in the ground. And that really had an impact on me. And um, I, over many years, it took a long time to realize, but over many years, I realized the impact that that fear was having on me, my life, life with my family, the things it was stopping me doing. And I guess it's all tied in with that, personal development journey and building my self-belief. But I got to a point where I just wasn't prepared to let it impinge on my life anymore. Um, so I think it's a classic case of, fear doesn't have to be a negative thing. Feel the fear, use that fear, but have the courage to do it anyway. And I know that's not easy. When something makes your heart race and your palms sweat and all this stuff, it's not easy to just say, oh, have the courage to overcome it. I know it's not as simple as that. But to kind of put things into perspective, summer just gone, when we were at the theme park in Germany, and the ride I was the most, I said I'm going on all of them, but the ride I was the most frightened of, when I was in the queue for that ride, it was the weirdest thing, because I felt relatively calm, because I know how to physically keep myself calm with breathing and thoughts, and I was talking, but there was also, there was um there was some frenetic energy there as well, beneath or sort of alongside the calmness. And it was, goes back to what we talked about before, about having to talk to yourself and almost say, look, I'm not going to die here. I'm not going to fall from height and be hurt. You're safer getting on a roller coaster than you are in a plane or a car, probably. And it was just, I spent the entire time queuing up, being worried yet calm, this really weird balance. But what I just kept telling myself is, you can do this. You're not going to get hurt. You can do this. And we got on the ride. I was petrified. That bit where you're climbing, 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 climbing. I was really quite frightened, but I just kept telling myself it's going to be okay. And I did it, and I loved it, and it was absolutely brilliant. And I went on it again, and even did it on the front row the next time, which I hadn't wanted to do the first time. So for me, that, for some people that might not seem significant. For me, it was hugely significant, because there had been so many years of not going on certain rides. I'd go on some, but not others. And missing out on experiences with my husband and my children, and it was detrimental to me and my psyche. So to overcome that and feel the fear and have the courage to do it anyway was huge. So yeah, that's my probably best current example.
I love that story. And the reason we talked about it was before was because I said there's also so I don't have a fear of roller coasters. I just don't want to go anywhere near them.
Yeah.
So my way of coping with them is just I'm the person at the bottom holding the coats.
Yeah.
And that's always another option. So we always have a choice, don't we, about
Yes.
what we do. It was something that really mattered to you, and you wanted to overcome it and to manage it differently.
Yeah.
I'm really happy with the way that I manage roller coasters, which is to
Yeah.
avoid them like the plague, all of them. So I don't have favourites. I avoid all of them because
Yeah.
it's just not my thing, and that's okay. So I think there are, there's, as we always say, there's never a right or a wrong, is there? There's
Yeah.
just different perspectives, which brings us
Absolutely.
beautifully back to ostriches, and the fabulousness that is an ostrich of seeing different perspectives.
Yeah.
And we're nearly at the end of the show, so
I
I
think
just
we are.
wanted to give a little plug, because the Training Rock, we have a webinar. So for anybody who's interested, a free webinar for anybody who's interested in learning a bit more about animal traits, and the trait test, and how your animal influences work in all sorts of things, in all sorts of ways, in leadership, in your coaching, in your world. We are doing a webinar on the 11th of October from 12:30 till 1:30. I think the fabulous Rachel is going to pop the link in the thing, or
I
if
am
that's
indeed.
tricky, Rachel, I can put it in afterwards. Please, it's free to register. And the record, if you can't watch it live, if you can't be part of the webinar live, it will be available on replay. So register anyway. It will be a fabulous hour. And I think I know we're focusing on having challenging conversations, and how our fear of challenging conversations, or having great outcomes from challenging conversations, how we can make that happen, so we can work on good outcomes for challenging conversations.
Fantastic. Well, I have put the link in, so the link is available to everybody. Vicky has asked, will it be recorded?
It will be recorded, and if you register, to say that you want to be part of it, then we will send you the link once it is recorded, and you can pop into that, and you can watch the recording.
Fantastic. Even better. So get yourselves on that link, folks. Feel free to do the trait test first, because that link is obviously further up the chat, and then get yourself registered for that webinar, even if you can't make it live. Everyone's a winner. I'll have to check my
Exactly. And
calendar.
if you have any questions, or you want to chat to me more about the trait test, then obviously just ping me a message and we can chat. But yes, looking forward to that webinar next week, and looking forward to our next Renny show the week after.
Yes, we shall be back with you in 2 weeks' time, people, for your dose of positivity and honesty. So, Jenny, I just have to say a huge thank you for today. I think it was an inspired choice to talk about fear, and hopefully all the people that are watching have got a lot from it. I think there were some brilliant nuggets in there. So thank you very much. An inspired idea.
And as ever, it's always a joy. I so love our conversations.
Me too.
And
Big win.
the
Face
idea
hurt.
is the idea is that we, as well as us having fun, we share value, and information, and our experience, because certainly I have been around the block probably a few more times than Rachel, because of my advancing years, but that's all to the good. So we
Absolutely.
are
Absolutely.
delighted to chat as ever, Rachel, and look forward to the next one. See you
Absolutely.
soon.
Absolutely. Take care, everyone. And thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you again in a fortnight. Thank you.
Take
Bye.
care now. Bye.